Hi, and welcome to episode 23 of the Give Me a Crown Knitting, Spinning and Bits and Pieces podcast. My name's Nina, also known as Give Me a Crown on Ravelry, Instagram, Pinterest, and it's also the name of my Etsy shop, where I sell zipper pouches, pencil cases, project bags, and knitting accessories. Today is Monday the 18th of January 2016, and I'm coming to you from Sydney, Australia. I'd like to say welcome to the new YouTube subscribers, as well as all the returning viewers. I noticed that there's been quite a few new subscribers on YouTube in the past week, so it's lovely getting to see that more people are coming to watch. So if you're interested, then please pop by the Ravelry group and say hello, and I'd love to know how you found out about this podcast. As I mentioned, we have a Ravelry group, so you can come in and comment on the episode thread or just take part in the everyday chatter thread, and I'll hopefully soon have another knit along or giveaway, probably around mid next month or so. This week there hasn't been any spinning, no dyeing, but there has been a little bit of knitting. Not as much as I'd hoped, because I went out to the central west of New South Wales on Friday to visit my mum, and just got back on Sunday afternoon, so I went to help her set up her new internet connection and troubleshoot some issues with her computer. So not a lot of knitting done there, but I did get some knitting done on the train journey that way. So I sort of take a 3-hour train journey and then a couple of hours in a coach and a car to get to see her, and then repeat that on the way back. So I was working on my Geisler cardigan while I was on the train, and this is how it's looking at the moment. So this is a paid for pattern on Ravelry by Sulby Similar, who's a Finnish knitwear designer, and it's getting a bit too big to show. So it's got a long collar, and I've added a few inches from last week, working on the increases for the hips. So I thought that I'd talk a little bit about how I'm doing those increases, because as I mentioned last week, the measurements for the hips on the size of the pattern that I'm following is a little bit snug for my liking. So I've decided to increase the stitch count for the hem. So what I did was I took my hip measurement, and then I calculated based on my gauge how many stitches I was aiming for. I then had a look at how many rows the pattern had for the increases that it had specified, and then I did some calculating to figure out how many increase rows I needed and at which points to put them. So I think that the pattern had 3 rows of increases over a set number of rows, and I've increased it to 6 just to get a few more stitches in so that it's not too snug. So I've got my little spreadsheet that I showed a while ago, and this is something that I printed off in order to keep track of where I am in the pattern. I have a lot of admiration for people who maintain knitting journals, and they have these beautiful neat journals that they write what they're doing and what pattern they're using and what yarn, and put their swatches in there. And I'd love to be able to do that, but just based on how I've been keeping track of my patterns to date, I just tend to scribble a lot, and in a lot of the rest of my life I am very organised. I've been a project manager in the past, and I like to plan, and I think maybe it's that when I get to do it digitally it's a lot neater, but when it comes to knitting I scribble. So the back of this has got various calculations that I've been doing, and the front of it shows the row numbers, and then I cross off the row number and I scribble on where to do my increases and buttonholes and various things. And the nice thing is it's lightweight, it pops into my project bag easily for travel, and it works. So I've got about 36 more rows of stockinette. So I've been purling away, and I can see the end in sight of the stockinette, because as I've mentioned before, purling isn't, long stretches of purling isn't something that I particularly enjoy, but on the train it was a little bit meditative. It takes me about 20 minutes to do one row of purling, so I'm just working my way through it, and I guess I've got about 18 more purl rows to complete before I just get to do stockinette for the rib, I hope. I haven't looked that far in the pattern. And then I get to knit the sleeves and the round, which I'm really looking forward to, because it's just going to be like knitting a very long sock. And yeah, so I haven't made as much progress as I'd hoped, but I still managed to make a fair bit considering how much travelling and time away from home I had. My other work in progress is my Pop Fizzle brioche beanie. So I've done a bit more on this in the past week. I think I was up to about here somewhere last time, and I've added some more. In last week's episode I spoke a fair bit about my thoughts on brioche and how it felt to be doing brioche for the first time, so if you haven't knit brioche and you haven't seen episode 22, then I recommend checking that out. I didn't take this one away with me because it would have required a lot more concentration than I was prepared to give it, but I'll be back onto that this week now that I'm back at home, and I'm still really looking forward to wearing it. And that's the inside, so it's looking pretty. And this is knit with Bendigo Woolen Mills Luxury 10-ply is the navy blue, and then the sort of purpley speckly yarn is from Rosehip Island on Etsy. And that's pretty much it for my knitting. I didn't work on my Craftfulness socks, and I haven't worked on my sock yarn blanket, but I got to see the update from my mum's blanket. Back in November I took my sock yarn blanket out to her, and she was impressed and inspired, and the next time I went to see her she had cast on a DK weight mitered square blanket, and it's been growing, so I'll put a picture of it in here. So she was working on her 62nd square, which is just astounding. I don't know how she does it, considering that she's been very busy herself, but she's a whiz with her knitting needles. So she's doing the decreases in a zigzag pattern, and she's thinking about doing it as a sort of a one-person blanket, and then she's looking forward to casting on another one. So with this one she's using mainly DK weight yarns as well as some fingering weight yarns held double, and I took her some of my scraps of DK weight yarn, but she also mentioned that she really likes the look of the self-patterning and variegated yarns, so I'll have to go through my stash and pick out a few more for her so that she can get a few more of those squares put in there. There wasn't much happening out there, just sort of catching up, even though I just saw her a few weeks ago, and getting her computer fixed up and getting the internet working, which is nice considering that she's had very poor internet access for a very long time. So I saw a few sheep and a few cows, and no kangaroos this time, but I didn't get any proper photos, so I did take a little bit of footage on the coach when I was headed towards Lithgow, which is on the other side of the mountains from here. I took a bit of video there, and then I also took a bit of video on the train leaving Lithgow on the way down to Sydney, so I'll pop those in here in case you're interested in looking at what the mountains look like. Apart from that, it's been lovely to get messages from some of the viewers out there, and you can always send me a private message on Ravelry, or come and say something in the Ravelry group, and even if I don't respond immediately, then I usually respond every couple of days when I'm home. So hopefully I'll be home all week this week, and I'll get a lot more crafting done, and then I'll see you again on Monday. So happy crafting, and I'll see you soon.